really just keep on coming. So I've noticed that that happens a lot. You know, and finally you say, you know, that's one of these threads that won't die. But anyway, you know, there's a lot of, but it seems like that for the most part, it stays civil. You know, you don't really, you know, it's been a long time since, you know, it had anybody being, you know, really arrogant or nasty on there. It seems like that the discussions are civil, but it just seems like it just goes on and on and on about the most trivial things, or sometimes about, you know, some particular plastic radio that probably very few people are interested in. But anyway, that's I guess that's what keeps things going. I haven't been on here in a long time, you know, especially 40. I think this is probably maybe the only second or third time this whole summer that I've been on this band, and I haven't been on 75 very much. You know, I tune in here at night and listen, and it's a lot of static usually. You know, I look at the lightning storm map, and you know, I see it lit up all over the country. So when that happens, I don't usually even bother to turn on the filament or anything. You know, this afternoon it looked like maybe there was. Well, it's there, but you know, but it's not. The whole map's not lit up like a Christmas tree. So I thought, well, maybe you know, there might be some activity in June. And you know, I didn't hear. In fact, I didn't hear any static crashes, but also didn't hear any stations. So that's why I decided to call CQ and see if we could stir up something. So, and then somebody called me like he had a good signal from Dallas, and then I came back to his call, and then he never returned again. I don't know what happened to him. So I just said, well, I'll call another CQ and see what happens. So WA3,
K4KYV, WA3VJB right back. Nice transmission, Don G. Your signal's holding up around 1520 over 9. Really, really nice signal, and just carries the day into the room here. Yeah, I've been on in the evenings, and I've been on early in the mornings on 40 meters. Both have some good propagation coverage. Seems like the morning hours from Maryland, the Mid-Atlantic region, will take me reliably into New England all the way up to Tim Tron's place, but also out toward Ohio. And then for the nighttime coverage path, it seems like it takes it toward the southeast, like we're enjoying right now toward Tennessee. There's a guy in Georgia who gets on here, and a number of other stations down toward the south. So it's interesting. I don't know if there's a lack of stations in New England who get on at night, or whether the band just happens to favor a path in that direction. But I do notice that there's a geographic distinction between morning on 40 and evening on 40. And yeah, the static crashes are just too heavy here in the Chesapeake Bay region to even bother with 80 meters. I think I told you the last time we worked that I've been staying down low on 80, if I get on 80 at all. It just seems like the scheduled net has taken up a lot of the 3880, 3885 area where ad hoc impromptu roundtables might otherwise take place. The guys who run the AM nets will come in there and pretty much have the same attitude that we've confronted for years with anybody who wants to stake a claim on a frequency and fire up on schedule somehow. And I don't think that's the most polite way to organize things, but they're also fairly reluctant to do anything about it. I have not heard much interest in relocating to a standard frequency, and I'm reminded of that by tonight's Antique Wireless Association gathering on 3835 that's underway right now. About 10 years ago, I actually contacted 5, maybe 6 net control stations of the various AM specialty gatherings. I said, look, I would be glad to make a grid, time of evening, day of the week, and post it somewhere where each net can publicize where they're at on 3835. everybody used that frequency as an AM net frequency, and whatever nights or night that you plan to use it and time of evening that you'd like, it's yours. It's a block of time, and it's yours. It just seemed like a much more, first of all, diplomatic way of populating a piece of the band, and secondly, would take some of the load off the more traditional watering holes where impromptu one-on-one and roundtables were taking place, unscheduled otherwise. But I just haven't gotten any traction at all. I think people have rusty VFOs or something. But yeah, I do tend to sit back after a while when they get down into the weeds on some of those threads. I also visit some of the other sub-pages on the Zed. I know you do as well. There's been a whole lot of concern and, I guess, outrage expressed about the current management regime at the league. They don't have any particular grievance against AM like the old days, but they also have an awful public relations problem right now. And there's an AM governance page, or I'm sorry, ARRL governance page on the Zed that draws a lot of interest among people who are concerned about where the league is going and how can it repair itself and its public image. So, because of my background, fighting them for so many years on behalf of this part of the hobby, I tend to weigh in there with matters of some historical significance. So that's a good place to not only have a good discussion, but to push back on some of the more stupid theories that are behind the league's management right now. So anyway, hope your summer's going well. We haven't been out too much in the boat this summer. Just a lot going on, and haven't done too much out on the water. But as I said, I have played on the radio a little bit more than I expected, despite the static crashes. We just had a storm move through, as a matter of fact, with significant thunder and lightning. So I'm glad that's not moved off the coast and calmed down. K4KYV, WA3VJB. Hope the signal's holding up.
Oh, it's still holding up very well. K4KYV right back. And no, well, like I said, I just haven't been on here a whole lot, but you know, I give 40 a listen, and then made a couple of contacts on 75. I was on late one night. You know, it was probably about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I just decided to fire up and see what would stir up. And then Tim came back to me, W1HLR. Tim came back, and we carried on for quite a while, but nobody else joined in. And then somebody came on with they were playing music. They were playing, you know, the same. I think they had a recording of some Mexican music, and they just kept playing that same audio track over and over again. You know, obviously to jam the frequency. And I was able to pretty much make out what Tim was saying, and he said he didn't have a lot of trouble with me because the problem is Tim is he's running about 100 watts, because I think he's had some major crap out with his what he calls the Junction 600. So he's limited to that little WRL Globe Champion with the single 812, and finally, I mean, I guess that thing runs about 100 watts. Of course, with his antenna system, he normally puts a pretty outstanding signal anyway. But when that jamming station came on, it was somewhat of a challenge to copy him. And then he indicated, he said, "Oh, this is something that's been going on for quite a while." I haven't really heard a lot of that nonsense place on the bands, but I haven't really been listening that much. So, you know, maybe it has. You know, the last time I did a lot of listening, you know, it seemed like things had, you know, operating pretty civilly on, you know, I hadn't heard a lot of that kind of nonsense, but evidently somebody had started it back up. And, well, as far as the summer goes, well, it's a lot better than last year, because last year I had this physical problem with my shoulders. I had a severe, you know, I assume it was arthritis, but I could hardly use my shoulders. You know, I'd lost all of my upper body strength. I couldn't and I was in quite a bit of pain. I ended up having a carpal tunnel syndrome, what they call a carpal tunnel release surgery, and that took care of a lot of the pain I was having. But then, as soon as I got that out of the way, then my shoulder started acting up. So I was kind of laid up for much of the summer. I didn't even I didn't have any problem. I went to Dayton in May, and of course that was before any of this cropped up. But I did not even attempt to go to the Huntsville Ham Fest in August because of this shoulder problem. Then I had the carpal tunnel surgery in September, and then ended up I had with this a shoulder problem. I had MRIs and X-rays and all kinds of tests, and they said, oh, just whatever showed up just seemed like normal, what somebody my age would expect to have. Nothing that was particularly outstanding. So they put me on a regimen of physiotherapy, and that seemed to, I haven't always had a lot of competence in that, but it seemed like it did gradually help, and I've still been maintaining the exercise regimen, and it seemed like it's pretty much gone away. And I've been out this summer doing a lot of working on the buildings. I can once again pick up the extension ladders and climb up on the ladders and do all of that sort of work. So that's been keeping me pretty busy over the summer. Is actually trying to get caught up on some of the outdoor projects with the buildings, and some just trying to maintain the property around here, because last year I was just I couldn't do any of that, and I kind of fell behind in the upkeep of the estate. But so this summer I've been trying to catch up on that. So I haven't really played a lot of radio. I've been mostly doing that, and then I maybe come in the evening and listen and not hear anything on the radio but static. So and I haven't even been doing. I've got a couple of radio projects. That's something that tends to be over the summer months when the bands are not in usable condition. I work on some of the radio projects. But I haven't really been doing that because it seems like that some of this building projects have been taking up pretty much all of my time and effort. And I've been trying to put a roof on the shed, and then I've got to do some work on the shack here too. When I get that out of the way, then I've got some work to do on the house. So I've got enough. If you didn't have it's so humid though. That's the problem. The heat and the humidity has been especially bad this summer. So I get up and it's just too hot to do anything. The time I get up and get out of the house in the morning, don't have very long to do anything before the hot, humid weather just I can't take that like I used to. So that's been somewhat of a limiting factor. But then I come in the house and I just don't really have the ambition to come out here and try to work on any of the radio stuff. So that's pretty much how my summer's been going. But and hopefully things on radio will pick up. In the next 2 or 3 months when the autumn weather conditions begin to roll around, and autumn band conditions begin to roll around, and maybe things will be better. But I've noticed every year, though over the last several years, it seems like that every new radio season the activity is more sparse than it was the previous year. So every year I'm saying, well, I hope the activity takes off again this year when the season rolls around. But it seems like that the bands are getting more and more sparsely populated every year. WA3VJV from K4KYV.
Yeah, I've noticed the same thing. I think you noticed it before I did. K4KYV, WA3VJV, only because you have a lot more agility among the bands than I do. I'll get set up on 80 meters down low, 3705, 37 1/4, and you'll be on 160. You know, I haven't done 160 in 20 years. And then I'll be up here on 40 for extended periods of time, a matter of months. And I won't even fire up on 80 meters at all. So wherever I hang out, I have a much narrower snapshot of activity levels than you do. But now that you mentioned it, and this is a couple of years ago, there has been more elbow room. That's kind of a benefit. More sparsely populated bands. Because there is more elbow room to carry on not only one, but maybe more than one AM roundtable, which is nice. So that's a benefit for those of us who do get on. But of course, a lot of the stations that we used to hear regularly are not on as often as they used to be, and that's a shame. Of course, some of them have even, passed away. That's inevitable, I suppose. But I was just thinking when you were talking about working around the property, Don, that the only pictures I've seen of your place were from the video that the Derv made during his visit, maybe 10 years ago? Maybe even longer than that. That video has been out there for a while. I captured it and moved it over to an AM archival page just to make sure that gets documented and put away and people know where it is. But it was remarkable. That's the only shots I've seen of the schoolhouse. I don't think I've seen any exterior shots, and I would like to see that. If you've got any JPEGs or something that you can email along to me, I'd love to see what the outside of the place looks like, just to kind of form in my head where you're operating from. I remember when you were setting the place up that was pretty cool, and it continues to be a nice radio lodge in your old schoolhouse there. Oh, I agree about the humidity too. We've got these two Labrador retrievers who love to have their daily hike, but they're both kind of cold weather animals, and they don't really do well with the heat and humidity either. So if we don't get out by about 9 o'clock, and that means getting out the door by 7:30 or 8 so that we can get an hour's run in, they're panting, and you start having concerns about them, even though we take water along. It's pretty hot, and they don't cool very well. So once it gets past about 9 o'clock, we're back in the house and taking naps the rest of the day. That's how the day usually unfolds. Not too many house projects here. We had a driveway regrading project. Over the years, we've had additional gravel poured down, and it wound up getting compacted and creating a ridge just before the house, so that when it would rain, the rainfall accumulation would move toward the house, and it started to back up against the front wall of the house underground and dampening up that wall. So we had that regraded earlier this year, and the water now flows to the left of the garage and off the property, so that's an improvement. It keeps that basement drier underneath the stairs, so that was a good thing. But yeah, past that, I've had some travel, taking care of some family matters, and not being on the radio or out on the boat as much as I would have thought. But that's the way that goes. So back to you, Don, and I saw a couple of carriers in there. I wasn't able to recover any audio. Drag your feet and see if we can't bring somebody else in. Speaking of which, they might be hearing you and not me the way the band's behaving right now. K4KYV, possibly a breaking station from WA3 VJB.
KC4MOP.
Is that Fred, KC4MOP? Go ahead, Fred.
It sure is.
Oh, yeah. Very fun business. I switched antennas to the beat on the vertical. And everybody's coming in a little bit better. Paul is very weak, but he's listenable and wonderful audio, Paul. And being that I can hear the other two, I'll turn it back to Don, and then you can whatever. But I'm in here. K4KYV, please take it KC4MOP.
Okay, Fred, KC4MOP. And VJB, this is K4KYV. You're right back. Well, good to hear you. Well, Fred, I don't know how many. It's probably been well, maybe a year or longer since we talked. So, it's been a while anyway. You know, I don't keep a log. You know, I guess there's some people that actually keep a detailed log. I don't. I just have a little notepad. I do jot names and QTHs and call signs and stuff like that, kind of as a crutch with my, you know, ever poorer memory. But you know, as far as keeping a log to keep track of the last time I talked to somebody, in fact, I haven't done that since, you know, back when the FCC deleted the requirement to do so. So I just have to kind of go by my memory. Well, when was the last time I talked to somebody? And Fred, I'm still using that same, you know, that audio processor that we did the swap many years ago. I think I sent you a mod reactor, and you sent me the URI BL40, and I'm still using that audio processor. And a couple of years ago, I had some major crap outs on it, and I ended up finally got it working again. I think I had to replace about half of the IC chips, you know, just because of my own stupidity. I was had actually the thing blew a couple of audio transistors, you know, which and of course the main problem with any kind of piece of solid state equipment of that age is finding replacements for the semiconductors. But you know, you have a piece of solid state equipment that's more than maybe 10 years old or so, and then you have a failure. The semiconductors are unobtainium. I mean, you can't find replacements, and that was a problem I had with that. And but I finally did get new audio transistors. But then, in trying to work on the thing, this was my where my I don't know if it was stupidity or senior moment or what, but anyway, I was working on the thing. I noticed that some of the electrolytic capacitors had, you know, there was junk oozing out of the capacitors. So I said, maybe I just need to go and replace some of those electrolytic capacitors. So I ordered a complete set of replacement electrolytics to put in, and then, you know, as soon as they came, I right away jumped into it and started working on that. And, you know, I pulled all the old electrolytic capacitors out and then put the new ones in, and then I suddenly I realized and said, oh my God, the thing was still on. Of course, you know, not having any tube filaments to light up or anything, you know, something that's the piece of solid state equipment that's turned off looks exactly like a piece of solid state equipment that's turned on, and somehow I had left the thing plugged in and turned on. And of course, when I pulled out those electrolytic capacitors, I used a solder wick to unsolder the old electrolytics, and of course that solder wick probably flipped over and shorted no telling what. And I ended up had blown some of the practically unobtainium op-amp chips in the thing, and I managed to source replacements for all of those. But then in troubleshooting it, I think I ended up blowing a couple of more. So I finally, you know, after a couple of months of tearing my hair out, I finally did get the thing up and running again. So and without any kind of audio processor, this rig just doesn't work very well without something, because if I keep the audio low enough that I'm not over-modulating, and then the average audio is down so low that you know, I sound like a lot of these other signals you hear with a big carrier and not much audio. So anyway, that was a couple of 2, maybe 3 summers ago that happened. Anyway, that's pretty much the status here. Yeah, the old I call it old school radio. You know, the ham shack is the old one-room schoolhouse. Now, Paul, there's another video that friend, let's see, what's friend's call sign, W3SCC, came by for a visit, and he also took some pictures. I think he took some pictures of the antenna system and the doghouse, and you know, my antenna system, I can take it out. some pictures there, and I don't remember whether you took pictures of the schoolhouse on the outside or the inside. And he posted a video, a YouTube video of that, and then of course there's the one that Derb did when he came out too. So I think probably if you did a Google search with my call sign, I think both of those videos, the last time I checked, both those videos were still there and they show up. So you might be able to get it from there. And I really need to update the photograph on the QRZ. My lookup page on QRZ. I need to update that because that picture is probably over 20 years old. And it's one of those things that keep kicking the can down the road to set up and actually redo the photograph. The place pretty much looks the same. You would still recognize from that picture if you were here. You would still look familiar, but then there have been a number of changes. And of course, that was before I got the broadcast transmitter, and I don't think any of the pictures really show right now. It shows the HF300 rig, the big black rig in the background. I think that's the only transmitter that's online with pictures of the station. I think I do have some still photos of the broadcast transmitter and then the other rigs, but as far as the videos, I think it just basically shows. I don't know. The one Derb did might actually shown this rig. This may be the rig that I was using when he came out that time. But anyway, there are some pictures out there, but I just haven't really taken the time to try to update any of that stuff. Some of it's as time goes by, actually some of those pictures are pretty outdated. So anyway, I'm hearing both of you very well. In fact, Fred and Paul, I think you're both coming in about equally well here. You two may be close enough that you may not be getting one another as well as I'm getting both of you. So anyway, Paul, go ahead. WA3VJV with KC4MOP, K4KYV.
K4KYV and KC4MOP. Boy, nice to hear your voice, Fred. Welcome back, WA3VJB. I'm using one of the KiwiSDR nodes in North Carolina that I'm hearing Fred on better than I am here at home. But Don, you're coming in better here at home than I am hearing you on the North Carolina node. So the band's got kind of an asymmetry to it. And speaking of which, it was nice to remind myself of the look of the modulameter, the BL40. We had one of those at the very first radio station that I worked with. And I think you and I have discussed how the automatic phase detector and flip-flop device in there is ordinarily defeated because you can hear it popping back and forth as it inverts the phase. I know the station I worked at defeated that. I think there was a switch on there for it and just left it in phase all the time on whatever programming they passed through it to set it with. But that switching back and forth actually made an audible thump in the program material on the output side, and it became very annoying, so they actually defeated it. But that was their primary audio processor when I first started working there in 1980 or 1978 or 9 as an intern. And then they switched to the trio of DBX 160s that were split by the Crown tri-band dividing network. And then they used that to combine on the output to give them tri-band compression. But yeah, the modulameter is an old soldier, and I was glad to hear that you restored that after the crap outs. Although I didn't realize some of the crap outs were workbench related, as we'll say. Yep. I'm talking about replacing chips and so on. Also reminded me of the services question. And I'm glad it's making the trip out to Pennsylvania. I wish I could say the same for the trip back for yourself here to Maryland, but I'm not having any problems copying you at all. Do me a favor, though. If you can dial into 7291 fairly exactly, I'm hearing a diddly station in there that creates a beat note on you. You were a little bit higher than that, and it was just enough of a heterodyne to compete with you at the trough of your signal as it goes up and down. So let me get it back to you and make a bit more of a transmission. What rig are you on and all that sort of thing. And man, it's nice to have you back. We were just talking about the Derb N3DRB and a video that he made of Don's place there at Woodlawn. It has to have been at least 10 years ago, probably closer to 15. And those are the only images I think I've seen of Don's station. And yeah, I'll look up the one with Fran there, W3SCC. There's another set of calls that we don't hear very often, although he has been on the Hamfest circuit. So I think I've seen him at a Hamfest sooner than I've heard him on the air. Fran SCC. Here comes Fred. KC4MOP and K4KYV on the side. WA3VJB Annapolis. I don't think he's hearing me, Don.
Fred, I wanted Paul turn it over to you. Did you lose him? KC4MOP from K4KYV. I can't switch between the transmit antenna and the beverage. It seemed like Fred this afternoon, the antenna has been doing a better job receiving than the beverage, even though the beverage is pointed up your way. But I was able to hear you, but you were down quite a bit compared to Paul. So, I guess that's 40 meters for you. It is kind of a fickle band. Just have to... it is what it is, and you just have to make do with what you have, I guess. And I noticed the same thing. That phase flipper in the muzzle limiter was very annoying. And the way you disable it, you just pull the thing does use IC chips that plug in. They have little sockets, and the chips plug into the socket just like tubes. So you just pull that particular IC chip out, and then that disables the phase flipper. It just puts it back into the normal mode, and it doesn't flip, because I found that very annoying as well. And not only do you hear the thump, but the people told me that when it would flip the phase, that they couldn't really define it in words exactly.
WA3VJB Annapolis at the top of the hour.
The audio had a different sound to it. There was something that it modified about the characteristic of the audio when the thing would flip to the reverse phase. So not only they'd hear a thump, then my audio would sound different. Then of course, most of the time it stayed in the normal position, but all it took would be some random noise in the shack, or if I drop something, or sometimes my voice, it might just be a little quirk in the voice that would make it abruptly switch phase. So I very quickly, after I got the thing, used it for a while, I realized what was going on. I just pulled that op-amp chip out of the socket, and that. I've been looking around for something, some other audio processing to play around with. I got a CBS Audimax Volumax combination, but I think that needs some testing out and maybe some work on that before I can start using it. And that project has been kind of set aside for quite a while now, because other things came up, and those things just still sitting over on the floor, and maybe one of these days get back and try those out. I think they're actually those predate the the module limiter, because they're almost completely discrete transistors and diodes. I think there's only maybe one or two IC chips in the whole thing, and it's almost all discrete components. So and I don't know how well they work. I have heard a lot of people talk about how they like they were running, how well they worked, how they liked them, but I've never gotten mine going. They were given to me, and at the time somebody had gone in and made quite a few modifications on them, and I kind of got everything restored back to condition. But still, I think there's some work I need to do to get the things to work right before I try putting them. They just been sitting over here on the floor in the corner for well over a year now. I just haven't got around to doing anything. I was able to download all the documentation online, and I just that paper disappeared. Things tend to disappear in the shack, and things that I don't take out of I know I don't take out of this building that will just disappear and vanish off the face of the earth, and it kind of goes into a black hole. I never see it again. So I hope that the documentation on those units hasn't done that. But anyway, that's pretty much it. And the microphone, I'm still using the unamplified D104 microphone, and 75A4 receiver with the SE3 Sherwood synchronous detector. So really, the station, the actual active station, hasn't really undergone any significant changes in quite a while. Although I would, in fact, I was looking back inside. Well, actually, it was a date in the spring. I ran into a fellow that said he has, let's see, what is it? An Orban. It was one of the Orban processors. And I thought that, I was assuming that that unit had, the look-ahead technology for the peak limiting. But then, I was able to download the manual on that, and apparently it does not. And that has been something that I've been interested in quite a while. And I don't know of all of the processors that are available for use. How many of them use that technology? Evidently, it's not as widely used as I thought it was. It's a good idea that if it works the way it's supposed to, it should completely eliminate the problem of overshoot. Where you the first of your voice, where you overmodulate, where you have road peaks at the beginning of a syllable. That the look-ahead circuit should completely eliminate that. But I haven't really found any, any kind of audio processing equipment that I would feel like investing the cost of it that uses that technology. So that's the. So I'm still using the BL40, and I haven't really done anything else with the Audimax Volumax units. Anyway, back to you. I guess it goes back to Paul. WA3VJB with KC4MOP, K4KYV.
K4KYV, WA3VJB with the group. Yeah, I'm not sure it's my turn. I'm going to try to get it back over to Fred. It seemed like he was not able to hear me, and he made a very brief transmission to let you know that, and I couldn't hear him either on either the node that I had tuned in on earlier or here at home. So I'll just make a few comments. There were two series of the CBS Audimax Volumax, Don. I don't know which one you've got. The older one used new Vistors and had a conventional forward-facing meter on it. Looked like about the size of a VU meter. And the later version, I don't remember what the the active semiconductors were in there, but it had an edge type of meter. That's the quick way to distinguish it. It was a much narrower rack width, or height, I mean, standard rack width, but it wasn't as high as the Audimax, Volumax, the original models of those. I had one of the Audimax, and I still have a couple of new Vistras kicking around here that I never needed to use. I passed it along because they're really meant to be used as a pair. And the Audimax is the gentle volume control adjustor, and the Volumax, I think, is the peak limiter. And I think one of the reasons the look-ahead technology, Don, has not gone on as much as you might think is that it does inject a certain latency in an air monitor. So people who listen to the air signal of the station they're on are going to hear it slightly delayed. And I suppose there are workarounds to feeding that processing of the board back through to the headphone amp where you're not really listening to the air signal. But in many cases, listening to the air signal is part of the magic. And I think the look-ahead downside is that it does need a little bit of time to sort out those peaks and snuff them out. There are a couple of processors out there, one of which is a not quite consumer grade, but not quite broadcast grade either, known as the DBX 166. And it has a rounded limiter on the thing instead of a square wave chop off that people find so annoying, rightly so. It rounds off that peak and suppresses it in a fairly short amount of time. It's not quite look ahead, but the duration of time that it takes to snuff it is very short. Consequently, I think even the super senior would be happy with it, and you would not have overshoot that would trip the protective circuitry. I have one of the Optimods here. That's what I'm using. It's the 9105A, the one that's intended for HF shortwave use. And it is such a fast-acting processor that I've never had any trips once I've had it set up for 99.5% baseline in the negative direction. And you hear the amount of compression that I can get away with on the positive side. It also has a fairly nice pre-emphasis curve in it that overcomes shortcomings in receiver passband or crappy 4-inch speakers on a desk somewhere. It winds up sounding better because it does pre-emphasize the high-end response to some extent without being brassy or shrill. So let me get it over to Fred, see if he's copying any better now. He might have found one of the nodes there to copy on, and hopefully so. Otherwise, Fred, we'll look for you again perhaps in the morning like we were talking about. KC4MOP and K4KYV on the side from WA3VJB. Go ahead, Fred.
Well, nothing heard. Fred, are you still there? Paul, turn it over to you. K4KYV listening. To get the frequency that we operated on, but they were on every afternoon. I remember there was a station in Rhode Island, and then there was W4ZZZ. Miami, and then there was, let's see, there were the guys out on the West Coast. You can even remember the call signs. I think one was W6PSS, and then there was another one that was quite well known out on the West Coast. And I remember there was a fellow named Blackie from near Cincinnati, and then there was Doug in Hamioga, Manitoba, VE4BX would jump in. I think most of those guys have passed away. I don't think too many of them around because this was back in the early, in the early 70s, like 72, 73, in that period, I guess around 70, 71, and 72, the early 70s. I used to guys, and then and I haven't done any 20 meters since then. That was one of the reasons that I didn't do a lot of 20-meter operations, because that would be a typical situation that somebody would transmit, and inevitably not everyone was hearing everyone else, and you would end up spending a lot of time just listening to dead air or static crashes or industry background and nobody talking. I just don't get a lot of kick out of that. And so that's why I've never shown a lot of interest in 20 meters in a long time. One-on-one with somebody, it works just fine, but then inevitably other stations break in, and inevitably you're not all hearing each other. And normally here on 40, not like that, but occasionally it does get that way, and I guess that's maybe that's a result of this solar activity and the solar flares, and that it had to been somewhat of a crop-out condition lately. So, but anyway, with Paul, you're still coming through pretty consistently. Fred, you did drop down, although I think you were a little bit better that last transmission than the previous one, but obviously you and Paul are not hearing each other. So, yeah, that is true about the look-ahead circuit, the latency. I guess the only way you could, well, there might be one workaround for the monitor. If you had a monitor that would that had a delay, an amplifier that had an adjustable delay, where you could line it up exactly to the latency of the processor. That I don't know how well you'd be able to make that work. Because I think it takes very little latency to make it. It's really confusing if you listen to your own voice through headphones, and then there's even a millisecond delay. That's enough to actually sometimes to make it difficult, because it's very confusing to the brain to hear that input from your own voice that's not instantaneous. So I see how that could be a problem. And of course, here what we do here on the radio, it wouldn't really be that much of a problem, because I very seldom monitor my own signal off air. I usually, I can do it. I turn the receiver on. I can't do it, but I normally don't do that except just to check the audio and check things. I can run my test source if I want to do that. Because I have this little thing. This is something else that's, I guess, pretty much yesterday's technology that most people have probably today have never even heard of. I use Sony mini disc. Okay, all right. The Sony mini disc, it's a recorder playback unit, and I record my. I haven't actually called a live CQ in years. I play the CQ on that the mini disc player, and also I have a that I can run, and so if I want to test over the air, I'll just run that. I don't really need to listen to my own voice, although occasionally I do it just to check to see how things are working. But, so that wouldn't really be too much of a problem with me. But I can see how somebody running running a broadcast station, that might be a considerable problem, and I don't know if there's any such thing as an audio delay that you could adjust to coincide exactly with the delay on the on the look-ahead circuit or not. But So you know, I see how that maybe that does somewhat inhibit the popularity of them. But, well, you think that because of that, maybe there'd be stations that purchase those units and then decide they weren't happy with it, and you know, you think there might be a few more of them popping up at Hamfest or what have you. But I'm not even sure which units, you know, which professional broadcast units even use that technology, because I thought the Orban, I think it was Optimod. I was thinking of the Optimod use that technology, but the particular one that this fellow had that I was interested in does not. You know, I declined to go ahead and try to work out a deal to purchase it because considerable expense to have bought the thing, and I decided, well, you know, if it doesn't have the look-ahead technology, I wasn't really that kind of money on it. So Paul, back over to you. Fred said he was just going to kind of go into the listening mode because I guess you two are not hearing each other, but he said he'd give me a shout in a little bit because he had some comment he wanted to make, so maybe conditions between us will improve as well. So WA3 VJB, this is K4KYV.
Well, I'll go ahead and sign here after a couple of comments, Don. We've had it for a while. Nice visiting with you. K4KYV WA3 VJB. Yeah, I was trying to get my head around the idea of delaying the headphone amp to the same extent that the look-ahead technology causes the delay, but you still run up against the problem of your real-time spoken word versus what the technology has to do. There's no way to cover that time discrepancy. In other words, when you envision having an amplifier synchronized, in effect, a headphone amp to the same amount of delay as the output, you're canceling one another out. It's the same thing. And your mind still is going to hear that slightly delayed as a distracting factor. They have these things at concerts where the huge outdoor venues will actually impose a certain time shift so that the near field speakers don't echo for the crowd farther back. It's an interesting matrix that they get going with directional speakers and so on, but they actually feed the outer speakers at some time shift that fixes what would be an echo between the near field speakers closest to the stage and the ones that are a quarter mile away or whatever. And it gets pretty exotic. I'm not quite sure how effective it is, but at least in the concert venues I've been, I have not heard the problem. But yeah, I think my point still remains that there's enough of a modified clipping now in some of these newer rigs, newer processors, that are not the sharp cutoff that makes such an annoying sound. They call it a soft knee in the name of the DBX model processor that I mentioned to you. And I think the 223, there's a what brand did they go by? Innovonics. Paul, W2JTD, has the Innovonics 223. And I think it has that soft knee clipper in it as well for the peak overshoots. It can snuff them right out without the annoying sound of square wave waveform peak limiting. So the Innovonics 223 is a modern processor, and you can actually program the pre-emphasis curve to use the same processor at an FM station, which has a different pre-emphasis curve than that which would be optimized for the AM type of station using the 223, same rig. So that's kind of cool, and there are all kinds of profiles that you can dial in there. One One of them might be what we would call full wartime mode, which was that heavily compressed, audio-shaped kind of piercing audio through congested conditions. And then when we've got better conditions, there might be a mellow audio profile that you could dial in that still raises the modulation index suitably without that kind of ear fatigue that can accompany something that has inadequate dynamic range between the loudest and the softest passages. This particular Optimod is about 40 years old. This is not one of the new ones. Band has continued to make audio processors, and their newest ones are computer-based. They have a microprocessor, a bunch of microprocessors in them, self-contained rack unit. They do have look-ahead technology. They have all the profiles, multi-band processing, all kinds of wonderful stuff. So if you look at the Optimod of today, you will see model numbers like the 9300 and the 9400. I managed to get Orban to donate an Optimod 9300 to WNAW when the CEO of the place about 10 years ago saw fit to permanently have the weeknight voice bulletin on 7290 on AM. And they are supposed to be using an Optimod 9300 to do so. So if you listen to the, I guess it's 9:45 p.m. Eastern Time, you'll hear the Optimod 9300 on the W1AW AM outlet on 7290 as a way of hearing how it behaves. So Don, let me take my leave of you for now, and real nice to visit with you for a while. It's been a little over almost an hour, I guess, since I heard your automatic CQ. Yes, I actually recognize it. I've heard you using that in recent years, and I knew that it was on a mini disc, because the only other person I know who uses mini disc recording and playback technology is Joe, WA3GMS. He used to go around the campuses and interview some of the AM luminaries with his mini disc recorder. So I imagine he's got an archive of a bunch of us who no longer are around. And that's on mini disc, so I hope he keeps his hardware that he can dupe it off. One of the other 20 luminaries that I bet you would remember is Les, K6HQI. Les was one of the last tall ships. I think he had a pair of 833As modulating a pair on 20 meters. And the old frequency of those days was 14286. 14286. Which has since become 14330, if you ever want to listen up there. 14330 is farther away from a slow scan television nest that seems to get in there. And 330 has been a lot more clear in the evenings. I picked up a station W7WRX in Arizona fairly regularly. Very, very good signal here to Maryland. And there is some other nighttime activity when the band is open on 20 meters. But yeah, I totally agree with you that when Les was running the 20-meter gathering, it would be Les making a transmission, turn it to somebody else who you couldn't hear, back to Les for a transmission, turn it over to somebody else who you couldn't hear, and then finally you turn it over to somebody who could hear. And in the meantime, there was a lot of dead air. So yeah, it's not my cup of tea either. I haven't been on 20 meters as a transmitting function for probably 20 years. Anyway, Don, take care. Give Fred a call, and maybe I'll hear him, and I'll look for you guys both again sometime soon, I hope. Hope the rest of your summer goes well. I'm glad you're not stepping off any walls anymore either. I was sorry to hear about your arthritic shoulder there, whatever that was. Glad you're on the mend and can do some work again with your upper body strength pack. I think it was necessary when you fell off the wall and broke some bones. Don't do that. K4KYV Woodlawn, Tennessee with KC4MOP on the side. WA3VJB Annapolis out of here for now. Take care, Don.
Okay, I'm going to have to go too. I didn't realize how late it is, and I take my evening walk. I take about a half-hour walk every evening. Kind of got into the habit. That was my wife came in a while ago, and she was ready to go because there's some TV shows she wants to watch. So I said, well, go ahead. I'll do mine later. And then I realized, well, it's getting late. I'm gonna have to go pretty soon because it'll be dark by the time I get back. If I don't do that, crazy people on the road in cars, and I don't walk along the roadway after dark. So I didn't realize it was getting that late in the afternoon. But yeah, that makes sense. I guess I wasn't really thinking about that. The latency in the look-ahead circuit, that you hearing your own voice. There's no way you could delay your own voice that you hear through your head, and once that latency's there's no way you could bring that back. You don't have a time machine, so there's no way you can get around that latency problem. If you're trying to talk in the microphone and then monitor your own voice, what you'd have to do would be not to monitor over the air, but to have a separate, just monitor the amplifier before it feeds the processor. That would be the way. Of course, you wouldn't be actually monitoring the signal, but you would be able to hear your own voice. That would be the only workaround that would function to get around that problem. Well, anyway, Paul, I do need to get out of here because I need to go ahead. I got to change into my walking shoes and my half-hour afternoon walk. It's going to get dark on pretty soon, so we'll catch you later. So, Fred, I might be back, when I get back. Probably another half hour, or maybe 35 or 40 minutes. So, maybe conditions will be improved and we can carry on. I'll jump back in here about, I say about 35 minutes or so from now and give you a call. We can hear each other. Anyway, right into you, Paul, and enjoyed it. It's been fun. So take care, and you too have a good rest of the summer. We'll keep in touch. WA3 VJB. This is K4KYV. Good night.
Okay, Don. Have a good walk. WA3 VJB.